This is our final group presentation on Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 52, and it is done by Amanda, Courtney, and Ashley, and we hope you enjoy. In this presentation, we will describe the basic details of our story. We will elaborate how each unit of the class ties into the story, such as courageous vulnerability, collaboration, leadership, and uncommon compassion. We will talk about which units are most prominent. We will relate our individual point of view. We will talk about quotes, and we will also discuss what other resources from the class gave us insight into this story.
In Mark 10, 35 through 52, we see two important stories. First, James and John come to Jesus asking for places of honor in his kingdom. Jesus responds by teaching them that greatness doesn't come from power or recognition, it comes from serving others. He says, "Whoever wants to be great must be your servant." This is a powerful reminder that true greatness is about humility and service, not status. The second story is about Bartimaeus, a blind beggar who calls out to Jesus for mercy. Despite people trying to silence him, Bartimaeus keeps calling out in faith. Jesus stops, heals him, and says, "Your faith has healed you." These stories teach us that faith and humility are key in the eyes of Jesus. True greatness is about putting others first and trusting in him with persistence and faith.
So, how do the topics that we have been learning, how do they tie into Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 52? First, looking at courageous vulnerability, in Bartimaeus' story, he showed courageous vulnerability by crying out to Jesus. He says, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And it says that the people around him, they rebuked him and they told him to be quiet. They just thought of him as this man who couldn't see, and he was just obnoxious because he was like screaming all the time. And so he stood up for himself in front of these people, and he didn't care what they thought. And it took great courage and vulnerability to do so. He's being vulnerable, he's blind, he's asking for somebody's help. And it took courage to stand up and speak in front of all those people that weren't really fans of him, and it took courage to stand up in front of Jesus as well. And then we're going to look at collaboration. And Jesus showed collaboration by teaching them that in order for there to be collaboration, there has to be respect. So he just can't grant these things because we're all supposed to be serving each other, not just specific people. So the whole point of collaboration is working together, and then if somebody thinks that they're above somebody, it's definitely not going to work because we all have to view each other as equals to be able to collaborate. Then we're looking at leadership, and Jesus demonstrates leadership by healing Bartimaeus by his faith. And then since he goes to follow Jesus down the road because of the leadership that he has shown. He healed him. And while it says he physically follows him down that road, he spiritually starts to follow him as well because he has seen what he has done. He has cured his blindness, and he believes and he has faith now. And then our last one would be uncommon compassion. Jesus shows uncommon compassion by listening to Bartimaeus' cries, and he helps him out when nobody would, and he shows compassion in that way because all these other people, they didn't have compassion for him when he was crying out for help. So Jesus stood up and he was very compassionate towards him. Which units are most prominent? So the units that were most prominent are uncommon compassion and leadership. And uncommon compassion and leadership are everywhere in the Bible, and I don't think that you can have uncommon compassion without leadership, and you can't have leadership without uncommon compassion. So for compassion, this is seen throughout the Bible. He shows compassion to others, and he teaches it as well. But Jesus sees beyond what's on the outside. He sees people for who they are on the inside. He cares about the whole person. And going back to Bartimaeus' story, Jesus didn't care that he was blind. He showed uncommon compassion towards Bartimaeus by caring about him when nobody else did. And that's how he teaches compassion as well. He showed compassion towards Bartimaeus and all the people around him who kind of shunned him. They didn't like him. They saw Jesus showing him that compassion, and so Jesus taught them in that way. Hey, look at me showing compassion to him. And so that leads me to leadership. And Jesus is a leader and he teaches leadership as well. So in the chapter, that's what James and John see him as. They see him as a leader. They call him teacher, and they say, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." Jesus says, "You don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" They answered him and they said, "We can." And then Jesus says to them, "You will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with, but to sit at my left or my right is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." So Jesus is acknowledging them, and he's saying, hey, that's not how we are going to do things around here. That's not how we do things in my kingdom. And then when the 10 around him, they heard about this, they became really upset at James and John. And so Jesus called them all together and he said, "You know that those are who regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many." So looking at that last sentence, he uses ransom as the price that he is paying. And he's saying that the most impactful leaders, they're not necessarily all about power. And Jesus just doesn't teach servant leadership. He doesn't teach leadership. He lives it. So all these people around him are watching him lead, and then they're learning from him.
In my journal, I talked about how healthcare is really about helping people feel safe, supported, and cared for. The course themes, Keep Me Safe, Make It Easy, Own It, and Love Me, stood out to me, especially the importance of safety and trust. When I read Mark 10:35-52, I saw a strong connection. James and John ask Jesus for honor and status, but Jesus shifts the focus. He says that real greatness comes from serving others. That message really supports what I've been learning. Healthcare isn't about recognition, it's about humility, empathy, and care. This passage helps me feel even more committed to a service mindset, but it also challenges me to keep checking my motivations. Am I truly ready to serve selflessly, even when it's hard or unnoticed? That's the kind of caregiver and person I want to be.
The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen, just listen. Helping, fixing, and serving represent three different ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. When you serve, you see life as whole. In our lessons on faith and healing, we talked about the way of transformation begins with faith and vulnerability. Bartimaeus cries out to Jesus when others try to silence him, being put in a vulnerable spot with believing what he believes in when others don't believe in the same thing. It takes courage to keep believing in what you do regardless of what others say.